The billionaire returned from a trip and found his triplets crying, scrubbing the floors of his estate. As soon as he learned that their stepmother had imposed this punishment, he did something no one expected. The gentle purr of the Rolls-Royce engine came to a halt in front of the imposing Miller estate. Jack, 40 years old, a billionaire in real estate, adjusted his platinum Rolex, 8:37 p.m., a whole day earlier than planned. His tired face lit up with a smile as he imagined the surprise on 3 identical little faces. "Thank you, Robert. You can go home now," Jack said to his driver, grabbing his Italian leather briefcase. As he walked along the driveway of imported stone, something in the air made him hesitate. The estate, usually alive with the sound of children's laughter until late at night, was strangely quiet. Jack frowned, a growing unease in his chest. The front door was unlocked. Odd, Sarah, his wife of 2 years and the girl's stepmother, was obsessed with security. Jack entered, his footsteps echoing across the marble foyer. Then he heard it, a low, muffled sound. Sobbing. It came from the main living room. Jack dropped his briefcase, his heart pounding. In seconds, he was standing in the doorway, and the scene he found froze him in place. Emma, Olivia, and Ava, his precious 5-year-old triplets, were on their knees on the Italian marble floor. Their small hands held mops almost bigger than they were, moving clumsily across the surface. Silent tears rolled down their angelic faces, mixing with the soapy water on the floor. For a moment, Jack thought he was hallucinating. This couldn't be real. His princesses, forced to clean like servants, in their own home. "Daddy!" It was Olivia who saw him first. Her high-pitched cry snapped Jack out of his trance and shattered the silence in the room. In seconds, 3 pairs of tiny arms wrapped around him, 3 tear-stained little faces pressed against his legs. Jack knelt, hugging them tightly, his Armani suit now stained with water and soap. "Shh, it's okay. Daddy's here," he murmured, his voice trembling with emotion and rising anger. "What happened? Who did this to you?" Between sobs and broken words, the story came out. Sarah, annoyed by their noisy play, had punished them. "Clean the entire living room," she had ordered. "Until it shines." Jack felt his blood boil. How dare Sarah? His daughters weren't maids, they were children. Children who should be playing, laughing, making a mess, not scrubbing floors like some twisted fairy tale. "Where is Sarah?" he asked, trying to keep his voice calm so as not to scare the girls even more. "In her room," Emma replied, her voice small and afraid. "She said we could only stop when we were finished." Jack took a deep breath, fighting to control his fury. He looked at his daughters, their designer dresses stained, their small hands red and swollen from the unusual effort. Guilt hit him like a punch to the gut. How had he not noticed before? How had he let this happen? "Come here," he said softly, standing up and picking Ava up in his arms. The other 2 clung to his legs. "We're going to get you cleaned up and then have something delicious to eat. How about some ice cream?" The girls' eyes lit up, despite the tears still present. Jack guided them out of the living room, his mind a storm of emotions. Anger at Sarah, guilt for his own absence, fear of what else might have happened while he was gone. While helping the triplets bathe in the luxurious whirlpool tub, Jack couldn't help noticing the little signs that had previously gone unnoticed. The way Olivia flinched slightly when he raised his voice, the anxious look Emma gave the Cartier clock on the wall, the unusual silence of Ava, normally the most talkative of the 3. How long had this been going on? What else had Sarah done? The questions kept piling up, each more disturbing than the last. With the girls clean and dressed in silk pajamas, Jack took them to the gourmet kitchen. While they savored artisanal vanilla ice cream with berry sauce, a clearly rare treat, judging by their enthusiasm, he watched them, his heart breaking. Emma, with her perpetually messy brown hair and inquisitive eyes. Olivia, the calmer one, her blue eyes now clouded by a sadness no child should ever know. And Ava, usually a walking ray of sunshine, now quiet and wary. Jack wondered how he hadn't noticed the changes before. He had been so absorbed in his million-dollar deals, so confident that Sarah would take good care of the girls. He had failed his daughters, and the realization was eating him alive. Daddy? Ava's voice pulled him from his dark thoughts. Are you going away again? The question hit him like a slap. The fear in her eyes, the barely concealed anxiety in her voice. Jack felt his heart break once more. No, sweetheart, he answered, pulling her into a tight hug. Daddy's staying here with you. I promise. The other two joined the hug, and for a moment, Jack allowed himself to feel only the love and relief of his daughters, but the anger still simmered underneath. Sarah had a lot to explain. After putting the girls to bed, all three in Emma's room, reluctant to be separated, Jack headed to the master bedroom. Each step echoed in the luxurious corridors of the estate, now seeming cold and impersonal. Standing outside the bedroom door, Jack hesitated. What would he say? How could he express the depth of his disappointment, his rage at without completely exploding? And more importantly, how could he ensure his daughters would never again be treated that way? He took a deep breath, steadying himself. The answers would come. For now he knew one thing for sure. Nothing would be the same as before. Tonight marked a turning point in their lives, and Jack was determined to right his wrongs. With one last deep breath, he turned the golden doorknob. It was time to confront Sarah and uncover the truth behind this nightmare. Whatever he did next could change his family's destiny forever. Chapter 2. The Confrontation and the Unexpected Decision. Jack turned the golden doorknob, his heart pounding hard in his chest. The master bedroom door opened silently, revealing Sarah sitting at the edge of the king-size bed, her posture rigid, as if she had been waiting for him. Their eyes met, and for a moment, silence weighed between them, loaded with tension and unspoken words. "Jack," Sarah began, her voice trembling. "You came back early." "Yes, I did," Jack replied, his voice low and controlled, but with a steely edge. "And I found a scene I never imagined seeing in my own home." Sarah looked away, her hands nervously clutching the expensive fabric of her yoga pants. The girls were making too much noise. "I just wanted some peace." "Peace," Jack interrupted, his voice rising. "And your solution was to force 3 5-year-olds to clean the floor as if they were maids." He stepped further into the room, his eyes fixed on Sarah. They were crying, Sarah, crying and scrubbing the floor with their tiny hands. "Do you have any idea what that does to a child?" Sarah stood up abruptly, her eyes shining with a mix of defiance and guilt. "You don't understand, Jack. You're not here all the time. They're impossible to control, always making a mess, always screaming." "They're children," Jack exploded, his voice echoing against the bedroom walls. "Children make noise. They make a mess. It's part of growing up, but punishing them like that, it's cruel, Sarah." "It's abuse." The word abuse hung in the air between them, heavy and accusatory. Sarah paled, her lips trembling slightly. I didn't mean..." "Didn't mean what?" Jack pressed, his anger now fully visible. "Didn't mean to hurt them. Didn't mean for me to find out. What else have you done when I wasn't here?" Sarah collapsed back onto the bed, tears beginning to stream down her face. "I'm sorry, Jack. I don't know what got into me. They were so loud, and I was so stressed." Jack watched her, his anger momentarily giving way to confusion. This wasn't the Sarah he knew, the confident, caring woman he'd married 2 years ago. Something was wrong, very wrong. "Sarah," he said, his voice softer now, "what's going on? This isn't you. Why are you treating the girls like this?" Sarah raised her eyes to him, her face a mask of anguish. I don't know how to be their mother, Jack. They're not mine, they never really will be. And sometimes I feel so lost." Jack felt a pang in his chest. He had been so busy with his business, so confident Sarah would take good care of the girls. He hadn't realized how much she was struggling. But then the image of his daughters crying on the living room floor flashed through his mind again, and he hardened his heart. Regardless of Sarah's difficulties, nothing justified how she treated the children. That's when an idea popped into his head. A crazy idea, maybe even cruel, but possibly the only way to make Sarah understand. "Tomorrow," he said, his voice firm and decisive, "you're going to experience exactly what you made my daughters go through." Sarah looked at him, confused and alarmed. "What do you mean?" "I mean, Jack continued, that tomorrow you will be the girl's maid. You will cater to their every request, no matter how trivial. Maybe then you'll understand what you did. The shock on Sarah's face was palpable. Jack, you can't be serious. I've never been more serious in my life, he replied. And if you refuse, you can pack your things and leave this house right now. Sarah gaped at him, her tears drying up with the shock. You'd throw me out because of one mistake? Jack met her gaze, his eyes as hard as steel. A mistake. Sarah, you traumatized 3 innocent children, my daughters. If you can't see how serious that is, then maybe it's better if you go. Silence fell between them, heavy and tense. Sarah seemed to be fighting an internal battle, her face a mixture of fear, guilt, anger, and confusion. Finally, she spoke, her voice almost a whisper. All right, I'll do it. I'll be their maid tomorrow. Jack nodded, feeling a mix of relief and apprehension. Good, we'll start early in the morning. You'll do everything they ask, as long as it's not dangerous or inappropriate. He turned to leave the room but stopped at the door. And Sarah, this is your last chance. If anything like this ever happens again, there won't be any discussion. You'll be out of this house and our lives for good. With those words, Jack left, leaving Sarah alone with her thoughts. He walked down the hallway, his mind spinning from the night's events. Part of him wondered if he was doing the right thing, if this punishment was just another form of cruelty. But then he stopped at Emma's bedroom door, where his 3 daughters slept together, and looked at their peaceful faces in slumber. In that moment, he knew he would do anything to protect them, to ensure they never again saw fear or sadness in their eyes. Tomorrow would be a decisive day, a day that might change everything. Jack only hoped it would be for the better. He quietly closed the door to the girls' room and headed to one of the guest rooms. Tonight, he would not sleep beside Sarah. Tonight, he needed to think, plan, and prepare for whatever tomorrow would bring. As he lay down in the unfamiliar bed, Jack couldn't help but wonder, would his decision save his family or destroy it completely? Only time would tell. For now, all he could do was wait for dawn and the start of a day that promised to be unlike any other at the Miller estate. The sun had barely risen on the horizon when Jack entered the triplets' bedroom. Emma, Olivia, and Ava were still fast asleep, their angelic faces free of the worries of the previous day. With a sigh, he gently woke them. "Good morning, princesses," Jack whispered, kissing each one on the forehead. "I have a surprise for you today." The girls sat up, rubbing sleepy eyes. "What surprise, Daddy?" Ava asked, the most curious of the 3. Jack smiled, trying to mask his own apprehension. "Today, Sarah is going to be your maid. She'll do whatever you ask." The triplets exchanged confused looks. Emma, the most sensitive, frowned. "Like yesterday, Daddy, do we have to clean again?" Jack's heart clenched at the innocent question. "No, sweetheart. Today is different. You can ask Sarah to do things for you. Fun things, like play or read stories." The girls still looked uncertain, but a spark of curiosity began to shine in their eyes. Jack helped them get dressed and took them to the dining room, where Sarah was already waiting, visibly tense. "Good morning, girls," Sarah said, her voice trembling. She cast a quick glance at Jack, who gave a firm nod. "Remember," Jack told his daughters, "you can ask Sarah to do anything today, as long as it's not dangerous or wrong. I'll be around if you need me." With that, he withdrew to a corner of the room, ready to observe and step in if necessary. Breakfast proceeded in tense silence. The girls ate slowly, casting curious glances at Sarah, who remained standing, like a real maid. Finally, Olivia, the shyest of the 3 mustered the courage. "Sarah," she said quietly, "could you please pour me some more juice?" Sarah blinked, surprised by the polite request. "Of course," she replied, pouring the juice with slightly trembling hands. That small act seemed to break the ice. Soon the girls began making more requests, growing bolder each time. "Sarah, can you braid my hair?" Emma asked. "I want to play dolls. Will you be the doll's mommy?" Ava asked, her eyes shining with hope. Sarah fulfilled each request, though Jack could see the discomfort on her face. She was clearly not used to interacting so much with the children, let alone catering to their whims. As the morning wore on, the girls' requests became more elaborate. They asked Sarah to draw with them, build a pillow fort in the living room, and even act out an impromptu play. Jack watched everything with mixed emotions. On one hand, his heart warmed at seeing his daughters smile and laugh, something he realized he hadn't seen much of lately. On the other, Sarah's evident discomfort worried him. Did she truly have no connection with the girls? Noon came, and the triplets asked for a picnic in the garden. Sarah, now visibly tired, prepared sandwiches and fruit, carrying everything outside. Sitting at a discreet distance, Jack noticed something surprising. While Sarah spread the blanket on the grass and arranged the food, Ava approached her with a freshly picked flower. "For you, Sarah," the little girl said timidly. "Thank you for playing with us today." For a moment, Sarah's mask of annoyance fell, replaced by an expression of genuine surprise, and was that tenderness? She accepted the flower with a hesitant smile, the first real smile Jack had seen on her in weeks. The picnic proceeded with a lighter atmosphere. The girls chatted happily, including Sarah in their conversations and games. Jack noticed that, little by little, his wife's rigid posture began to relax. After lunch, Emma asked Sarah to read them a story. To Jack's surprise, Sarah not only read but did different voices for each character, eliciting delighted giggles from the triplets. As the afternoon went on, Jack noticed a subtle yet significant shift. The girls' requests became less about making Sarah work and more about including her in their activities. They wanted her to participate in their games, not just serve them. Around 4 in the afternoon, Jack found Sarah in the kitchen, preparing a snack for the girls. She looked exhausted, but there was something different in her eyes, a softness he hadn't seen in a long time. "How are you feeling?" he asked cautiously. Sarah let out a deep sigh. "Tired. But I can't explain it. It's different from what I expected." "Different how?" She paused, considering. "They're sweet. I hadn't noticed before. I always only saw the noise, the mess, but today they thanked me for simple things, gave me flowers. Ava hugged me after I healed her doll's injury." Jack felt a lump in his throat. "They're wonderful children, Sarah. They just want to be loved." Sarah nodded slowly, tears forming in her eyes. "I was so cruel yesterday. How could I do that to them?" Before Jack could answer, they heard hurried footsteps, and the triplets burst into the kitchen. "Sarah! Sarah!" Olivia yelled. "Come see, we made a picture for you." Sarah looked at Jack, a mix of guilt and hope in her eyes. He nodded encouragingly. "I'm coming, girls," she said, her voice soft. As Sarah followed the excited children out of the kitchen, Jack felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps, just maybe, this crazy experiment was working. Perhaps there was a chance for his family after all. The day wasn't over yet, and Jack knew there would be more challenges ahead. But for the first time since he'd come home the night before, he felt that maybe, just maybe, everything could be okay. Jack withdrew to his office, the only room in the mansion that seemed untouched by the emotional chaos of the last few days. He sat down in his leather chair, eyes fixed on the view beyond the floor-to-ceiling window, but his mind was elsewhere, wandering through the corridors of time. The distant sound of the triplets' laughter, mixed with Sarah's voice, floated to him, a constant reminder of the unusual situation he had created. Jack closed his eyes, allowing himself, for the first time in a long while, to truly reflect on his marriage and family life. When he met Sarah 3 years ago, she seemed like the answer to all his prayers. Widowed for 2 years, struggling to balance his vast business empire with raising 3 little girls, Jack saw in Sarah a strong, independent, and above all, loving partner. Their rapid marriage, only 6 months after meeting, felt like both the most logical and the most emotionally correct decision. But now, as he replayed his memories with more critical eyes, Jack began to notice the signs he'd ignored. The small tensions, the moments of Sarah's discomfort around the children, the whispered arguments late at night he'd dismissed as normal family adjustments. One memory in particular stood out, sharp and painful. It was the triplets' 4th birthday party, about 6 months after the wedding. Sarah had organized an elaborate celebration with princess decorations and a 3-tier cake. Jack remembered being impressed with her effort, but now he recalled something else. The look of exhaustion and almost resentment on Sarah's face when the girls, in their excitement, knocked the cake over before they could blow out the candles. "How did I miss that?" Jack muttered to himself, running a hand over his tired face. Another memory resurfaced. One night, about a year ago, he woke to the sound of muffled sobs. Sarah was sitting on the edge of the bed, crying silently. When he asked what was wrong, she quickly wiped her tears and said it was just a headache. Jack, exhausted from a long work week, accepted the explanation without question and went back to sleep. Now he wondered what had really been behind those tears. Sarah's words the previous night echoed in his mind. "I don't know how to be their mother, Jack. They're not mine. They never really will be." Jack felt a wave of guilt wash over him. He had assumed Sarah would naturally adapt to motherhood, that her love for him would create an instant bond with the girls. But he had never truly asked her how she felt, never offered the support and guidance she probably desperately needed. And the triplets. Jack realized he couldn't remember the last time he spent an entire day with them, uninterrupted by work or other obligations. He loved them unconditionally, that was indisputable. But love wasn't the same as presence, and he had failed to be truly present in their lives. A lump formed in Jack's throat as he remembered Emma asking him, weeks ago, if he loved them as much as he loved his work. At the time, he had laughed and assured her he did, but now the question hit him with the full force of his unintentional neglect. Jack stood abruptly, walking to the wall of books. His eyes landed on a framed photograph, himself, Sarah, and the triplets on their honeymoon in the Maldives. They all smiled for the camera, the perfect image of a happy family. But now, looking more closely, Jack noticed the tension in Sarah's posture, how her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "How did I let it come to this?" he asked aloud. The answer, he realized, was simple and painful. He had become complacent, confident that his love and financial success would be enough to sustain his family. He had neglected the emotional work needed to truly build a strong family unit. Jack returned to his desk, opening a drawer and removing an old photo album he hadn't looked at in years. Page after page showed moments from the triplets' lives, their birth, first steps, birthdays, Christmases. In almost all of the more recent pictures, Jack noticed he was absent or distracted, often looking at his phone. One picture in particular caught his attention. It was from about a year ago, showing Sarah on the couch with the 3 girls. At first glance, it looked like a lovely scene of family bonding. But looking closer, Jack noticed the stiffness in Sarah's posture, the way the girls seemed to keep a small but noticeable distance from her. It was then that Jack realized the magnitude of his mistake. He hadn't just neglected his family. He had created an environment where everyone, Sarah and the girls, felt emotionally insecure and disconnected. The sound of laughter drifting from the garden broke into his dark thoughts. Standing, Jack walked to the window. Down below, he saw Sarah and the triplets playing tag. To his surprise, Sarah was laughing, her hair disheveled, her expensive clothes stained with grass. The girls ran around her, their faces shining with joy. The scene brought tears to Jack's eyes. This was what he wanted for his family, carefree joy and genuine connection. But it also filled him with deep regret for the lost time and wasted opportunities. "It's not too late," he told himself, his voice firm with new resolve. "I can fix this. We can fix this." With renewed determination, Jack left his office. It was time to join his family, to be truly present, not just physically, but emotionally. The path ahead would be difficult, he knew. There would be more arguments, more tears, more moments of doubt. But for the first time in a long while, Jack felt a spark of genuine hope. As he descended the stairs toward the garden, Jack made a silent promise to himself, to Sarah, and to his daughters. From now on, his family would come first. No matter what it took, he would do everything in his power to heal past wounds and build the loving, unified future they all deserved. Jack sat in his office, holding a photo of his late wife, Elizabeth, in his hands. The image transported him back in time to a period that felt both like a distant nightmare and a fresh wound. 5 years ago, at age 35, Jack was at the pinnacle of his career. His real estate development company was growing exponentially, and he had just closed the biggest deal of his life. Elizabeth was pregnant with triplets, and the future looked bright and full of promise. Then, on a rainy October night, everything changed. The phone rang at 3 a.m. Jack could still hear the doctor's grave voice. "I'm sorry, Mr. Miller. There were complications during the birth." Elizabeth had died giving birth to their daughters. The days that followed were a blur of pain, grief, and overwhelming responsibilities. Jack found himself a single father of 3 newborn babies while trying to keep his company afloat. A particularly vivid flashback hit him. He was sitting on the nursery floor at 2 a.m., Emma in his arms, Olivia crying in her crib, and Ava finally asleep after hours of colic. Tears ran down his face as he whispered, "I don't know if I can do this, Liz. I don't know how to be a dad without you." The first months were a test of endurance. Jack hired a team of nannies to help, but insisted on being present for every late-night feeding, diaper change, and milestone. His personal assistant, Maria, practically took over running the company, allowing him to focus on his daughters. But the balance was precarious. Jack recalled a crucial meeting when the triplets were 6 months old. He was about to close a multi-million-dollar deal when his phone rang. It was the nanny. Ava had a high fever and was being rushed to the hospital. Without hesitation, Jack got up in the middle of the meeting. "Gentlemen, my daughter needs me. We'll continue this another day." He walked out, leaving a room full of astonished executives behind. That night in the hospital, holding Ava as she received treatment for an ear infection, Jack made a promise to himself and his daughters. They would always come first, no matter the cost to his business. The following years were a roller coaster of emotions and challenges. Jack struggled to be present for every important moment in the girls' lives, often sacrificing business opportunities or surviving on just a few hours of sleep to balance everything. There were moments of pure joy: Emma's first smile, Olivia's first steps, Ava's first word, aptly Dada. But there were also moments of deep despair, when Elizabeth's absence felt heavier, and Jack questioned whether he was doing enough, doing it right. One moment stood out vividly. The triplets had just turned 3, and Jack took them to the park. As he watched them play, a woman approached. "Your daughters are adorable," she commented. "Their mum must be proud." The pain Jack felt at that moment was almost physical. She passed away," he managed to say. The look of horror on the woman's face almost made him laugh if it weren't so painful. "Oh, I'm so sorry. You're raising all 3 alone?" Jack nodded, his eyes never leaving the girls. "They're my life," he said simply. It was in that moment, watching his daughters laugh and play, that Jack realized that despite all the challenges, he was managing. His girls were happy, healthy, and loved. Maybe he wasn't perfect, but he was doing his best. But loneliness was a constant companion. Nights were the worst when the house was silent and the ghosts of the past felt closer. Jack found himself talking to Elizabeth, sharing the day's joys and frustrations, desperately wishing she were there to see their daughters grow. It was in that context that Sarah entered his life, like a ray of sunshine after a long storm. They met at a charity event. Sarah was intelligent, beautiful, and most importantly, seemed genuinely interested in the triplets. Their first date was a picnic in the park with the girls. Jack was amazed at how easily Sarah interacted with them, playing hide-and-seek and helping build sandcastles. For the first time in years, Jack allowed himself to imagine a future where he wouldn't be alone, where his daughters would have a mother figure. The dating phase was a whirlwind. Sarah seemed perfect in every way. She was understanding about Jack's demanding job and patient with the girls' needs. When Jack proposed marriage just 6 months after meeting, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. The ceremony was small and intimate. Jack vividly remembered the moment Sarah made her vows, not just to him but to the girls as well, promising to love and care for them as if they were her own. At that moment, Jack felt like a huge weight had been lifted off his shoulders. Finally, his family would be complete again. The first months of marriage seemed to confirm all his hopes. Sarah quickly adapted to the family routine, helping with meals, bedtime, and the girls' countless activities. Feeling safer at home, Jack began to dedicate more time to his work, confident Sarah was taking care of everything. But now, sitting in his office 2 years later, replaying these memories, Jack wondered if he had made a terrible mistake. Had he, in his rush to fill the void Elizabeth left and his desire to give the girls a mother, ignored important signs? Did he really know Sarah, or just the idea of her he'd constructed? Sarah's words echoed, "They're not mine. They never really will be." How had he not noticed that disconnect before? Had he been so blind with gratitude and relief that he ignored his wife's true feelings? Jack put Elizabeth's photo back in the drawer, feeling the weight of his past decisions. He had believed that marrying Sarah would be the perfect solution for his fragmented family. Now he faced the painful reality that he might have only created new problems. With a deep sigh, Jack stood. The past couldn't be changed, but the future was still in his hands. It was time to face the present and fight for the future his daughters deserved, even if that meant questioning everything he thought he knew about his marriage and his wife. The afternoon sun filtered through the windows of the Miller estate, casting golden shadows across the living room carpet. Sarah, exhausted after hours of catering to the triplets' requests, sank onto the sofa for a moment of rest. Her expensive clothes were wrinkled, her hair disheveled, and there was a paint smudge on her cheek, a souvenir from a painting session with the girls. Closing her eyes, Sarah allowed herself a moment of reflection. The day had been surprising. When Jack announced her punishment, she expected hours of torment, dealing with spoiled, demanding children. Instead, she found herself immersed in a world of imagination and childhood joy she had never truly experienced before. A shrill laugh interrupted her thoughts. Opening her eyes, Sarah saw Ava running through the living room, a crooked paper crown on her head. Sarah, look, I'm a princess now." Before she could stop herself, Sarah smiled. "You're the prettiest princess I've ever seen, Ava." The girl's eyes lit up at the compliment, and Sarah felt something strange in her chest, a warmth she couldn't explain. "Come on, Sarah," Emma called from across the room. "We need to build a castle for Princess Ava." Normally, Sarah would have declined, citing work or fatigue, but today, without a second thought, she got up and joined the girls on the floor. As they stacked cushions and sheets to create a castle, Sarah found herself laughing genuinely for the first time in, well, she couldn't remember the last time. The girls were so enthusiastic, so full of life and creativity. How had she never noticed this before? "Sarah," Olivia said shyly, offering her a plastic tiara, "you can be the queen, okay?" Sarah hesitated for a moment, feeling silly, but the hopeful look on Olivia's face melted her defenses. Placing the tiara on her head, she declared in a ridiculously regal tone, "I accept this honor, Princess Olivia." The girls' laughter filled the room, and Sarah found herself laughing along, the sound of her own joy surprising her. As the afternoon wore on, Sarah was completely absorbed in the triplets' world. They hosted an imaginary tea party, with Sarah pouring tea into toy cups and praising invisible cakes made by Emma. During a break in the games, Ava approached Sarah, her large blue eyes, so much like Jack's, filled with curiosity. "Sarah, why didn't you ever play with us like this before?" The innocent question hit Sarah like a punch to the stomach. Why indeed? She found herself struggling to find an answer. I guess I didn't know how," she finally admitted, surprising even herself with her honesty. Ava considered this for a moment, then smiled. "Well, now you know, and you're really good at it." The sincere compliment brought unexpected tears to Sarah's eyes. She blinked quickly, trying to hide them, but Emma noticed. "Sarah, are you sad?" the girl asked, concern evident in her voice. "No, sweetie," Sarah replied, her voice trembling slightly. "Sometimes people cry when they're happy, too." The words left her mouth before she could think, and Sarah realized with a shock that it was true. She was happy, truly happy in a way she hadn't been for a long time. The triplets, prompted by a compassion Sarah had never noticed before, came closer and hugged her. That simple, pure gesture of affection broke something inside her. Sarah hugged them back, allowing herself, for the first time, to truly feel the love of these little girls. At that moment, sitting on the floor of her luxurious living room, surrounded by scattered toys and embraced by 3 pairs of little arms, Sarah felt a profound shift inside her. The barriers she had built over the years, the fear of not being good enough, the resentment of caring for children who weren't hers, the constant insecurity began to crumble. She looked at each of the girls, really seeing them for the first time. Emma, with her boundless curiosity and generous heart. Olivia, quiet and observant, but with a depth of emotion Sarah had never noticed. And Ava, usually bold and affectionate, always ready with a smile or a hug. How could she have been so blind? How could she have wasted so much time keeping these wonderful children at arm's length? Guilt hit her full force, mixed with a flood of other emotions she could barely process. Regret for lost time, shame for her past behavior, and something else, something she was afraid to name, but that felt a lot like love. Sarah? Olivia's voice brought her back to the present. Can we do this again tomorrow? The question was simple but loaded with hope. Sarah felt her heart tighten. Of course we can, sweetie, she replied, surprised at the sincerity in her own voice. As the girls cheered, Sarah found herself smiling, but inside she was in turmoil. What did this sudden change in her feelings mean? How could she have been so wrong about these children, about her role in their lives? And most importantly, what did it mean for the future? Sarah knew she couldn't turn back, pretend this day hadn't happened. Something fundamental had changed within her, and she would have to face the consequences of that change. Looking at the triplets, now absorbed in another game, Sarah felt a mix of fear and hope. Fear of the unknown, of what opening herself emotionally might bring, but also hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, she could be the mother these girls deserved. With a deep sigh, Sarah rejoined the girls' play, determined to enjoy every moment of this unexpected day. The questions and doubts could wait. For now, she would simply allow herself to be present, be loving, be the Sarah she never knew she could be. Night fell over the Miller estate, bringing with it a heavy silence. Jack and Sarah were in the living room, the evidence of the chaotic day still visible around them. Scattered toys, pillows out of place, and bits of snacks on the tables. Jack watched Sarah for a moment. She looked exhausted, but there was something different on her face, a softness he hadn't seen in a long time. Deciding it was time to address the elephant in the room, he cleared his throat. "So, how was your day?" he asked, trying to keep his tone casual. Sarah looked at him, her eyes revealing a complex mix of emotions. "It was interesting," she replied vaguely. Jack waited for her to elaborate, but Sarah remained silent, her fingers nervously playing with the hem of her blouse. Sensing he had to push a bit more, Jack continued. "The girls seem to have fun. I've never seen them so excited with you before." Sarah flinched slightly at his words, a flash of guilt crossing her face. "Yes, they're good kids." "They really are," Jack agreed, leaning forward. "Sarah, what happened today?" "You seem different." Sarah sighed deeply, finally meeting Jack's eyes. "I don't know, Jack, I really don't. It was like I saw them for the first time." Jack felt a surge of hope. "That's good, isn't it? Maybe this is a new beginning for all of us." But to his surprise, Sarah stood up abruptly, starting to pace around the room. "It's not that simple, Jack. You don't understand." "Then help me understand," Jack pleaded, frustration creeping into his voice. "Talk to me, Sarah. What's going on with you?" Sarah stopped, her back to Jack. When she spoke, her voice trembled. "I'm not a good mother to them, Jack. I never have been. And now I don't know if I ever can be." Jack got up, moving closer to her. "Of course you can. What I saw today proves it. The girls loved spending time with you." Sarah turned to face him, tears shimmering in her eyes. "What if it's too late? What if I've already ruined everything?" "It's never too late," Jack insisted, placing his hands on Sarah's shoulders. "We can fix this together. In fact, I was thinking..." He hesitated for a moment, but decided to go ahead. "Maybe it's time we expand our family, have another child, a baby of our own. It could bring us even closer." The words were barely out of his mouth when Jack realized his mistake. Sarah's face went pale, and she pulled away from him as if burned. "Another child," she whispered, her voice loaded with emotion. "You think having another baby will fix everything?" Jack, realizing too late the magnitude of his error, tried to explain. "No, that's not what I meant. I just thought—" "You don't think, Jack," Sarah burst out, years of bottled-up emotions finally overflowing. "You have no idea what it's like for me. Taking care of 3 kids that aren't mine, trying to be a mother when I'm not even sure I can." She stopped abruptly, as if she'd said too much. Jack, confused and alarmed, took a step toward her. "Sarah, what are you talking about? What do you mean, not sure you can?" Sarah shook her head, tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. "Nothing. Forget what I said." "No, I can't forget," Jack insisted, his own frustration rising. "There's something you're not telling me. What is it?" "Let it go, Jack," Sarah shouted, her voice echoing through the living room. "You wouldn't understand. You never do." The silence that followed was deafening. Jack and Sarah stared at each other, both breathing heavily, years of misunderstandings and secrets hanging between them like an invisible wall. Finally, Sarah spoke, her voice low and defeated. "I need time. I can't do this now." Before Jack could respond, she left the room, her hurried footsteps echoing on the stairs. Jack stood there, stunned, trying to process what had just happened. He sank onto the sofa, running his hands over his face in frustration. How had things gone so terribly wrong? The day had started with so much promise, with hope for a new understanding between Sarah and the girls, and now Jack looked at the staircase, debating whether he should follow Sarah. But something stopped him. Her words echoed in his mind. "Taking care of 3 kids that aren't mine, trying to be a mother when I'm not even sure I can." What had she meant by that? There was more going on, something Sarah wasn't telling him. And suddenly, Jack realized just how little he truly knew about his own wife. Rising slowly, Jack walked to the window, staring into the dark night outside. The mansion, which should have been a home full of love and laughter, now felt cold and empty. And for the first time since he'd married Sarah, Jack wondered if he'd made a terrible mistake. Climbing the stairs to sleep in one of the guest rooms, Jack knew things couldn't go on like this. Something had to change, soon. But what exactly and how, he had no idea. Casting one last look at the closed door of the master bedroom, where Sarah was likely crying alone, he entered the guest room, shutting the door behind him. It would be a long night, and tomorrow would bring new challenges. But one thing was certain. The Miller family was on the brink of a drastic change, and nothing would ever be the same after this night. The sun had barely risen when Jack woke up feeling disoriented in the guest room. For a moment, he was confused about why he wasn't in his own bed, until memories of the previous night washed over him like a wave. The argument with Sarah, the harsh words exchanged, the unresolved mystery between them. With a heavy sigh, Jack got up. Maybe after a night's sleep, they could talk more calmly. He headed to the master bedroom, mentally rehearsing what he would say, but the room was empty. The bed was made, untouched. "Sarah," Jack called, a knot forming in his stomach. Silence was his only response. That's when he noticed the folded piece of paper on the nightstand. With trembling fingers, Jack picked it up and read, "Jack, I need some time to think. Please don't look for me. Take care of the girls, Sarah." Jack's world seemed to crumble. Sarah had gone, run away in the middle of the night, leaving only this cryptic note. His mind spun with questions. Where could she have gone? How long would she be away? What exactly did she need to think about? And most importantly, how would he explain this to the girls? As if summoned by his thoughts, Jack heard small voices in the hallway. The triplets were awake. "Daddy! Sarah!" Emma called, her voice echoing in the silent house. Jack closed his eyes for a moment, gathering strength. He needed to be strong now, for his daughters. Putting the note in his pocket, he stepped out to meet them. Ava was the first to notice something wrong. "Daddy, where's Sarah? She promised to make pancakes today." Jack's heart clenched. How could he explain this to 5-year-olds? "Girls," he began, kneeling to their level. Sarah had to go away for a while. Did she go to work? Olivia asked innocently. Jack shook his head. No, honey. She had to take a trip. But she didn't say goodbye, Emma protested, tears filling her eyes. She always says goodbye when she travels. I know, Princess, Jack said gently, pulling Emma into a hug. Sometimes adults have to do things that don't make much sense. The triplets exchanged confused, worried glances. Jack could see the fear growing in their eyes, and it broke his heart. She's coming back, right, Daddy? Ava asked, her voice trembling slightly. Jack hesitated. He desperately wanted to say yes, to assure his daughters that everything would be fine, but he also didn't want to lie to them. I hope so, sweetheart, he finally replied. But for now, it's just the four of us, okay? And we'll be fine together. The girls nodded, still looking uncertain. Jack forced a smile, determined to keep things as normal as possible. Now, how about those pancakes? I might not be as good as Sarah, but I promise they'll be edible. While making breakfast, Jack battled internally. Part of him wanted to leave immediately, to search for Sarah everywhere. The thought of her out there alone, possibly upset or in danger, ate at him. But another part of him knew he couldn't abandon the girls. They were already confused and frightened by Sarah's sudden disappearance. If he left too, it would only heighten their anxiety. As he watched them eat their pancakes, which thankfully turned out better than he expected, Jack wondered what Sarah was doing at that very moment. Where had she gone? Was she safe? Daddy, are you sad? Olivia's voice pulled him back to the present. Jack realized he had been staring off into space, a worried expression on his face. He quickly composed himself, forcing another smile. No, sweetheart, just thinking. How are the pancakes? Tasty, Ava exclaimed, her mouth full. But Sarah's are better. The innocent comment hit Jack like a punch to the stomach. It was incredible how in just one day Sarah had become so important to the girls. And now she was gone, leaving a void he had no idea how to fill. After breakfast, Jack found himself facing an entire day with no structure. Normally, Sarah would handle the girls while he worked. Now he had to be a full-time dad and still figure out what to do about his wife's disappearance. Deciding to keep the girls busy was the best strategy. Jack proposed a day of activities. They painted, watched movies, and had a picnic in the garden. But behind every smile and laugh, Jack could see the worry in his daughter's eyes. That night, as he tucked them in, Emma asked the question Jack had been dreading. Daddy, did Sarah leave because of us? Were we bad to her? Jack felt his heart break. No, my love, he said firmly, hugging her tight. You did nothing wrong. Sarah is dealing with some tough things right now, but it's not your fault. After finally getting the girls to sleep, Jack retreated to his office. Picking up the phone, he hesitated. Should he call the police? Sarah's friends? Or respect her request and not search for her? In the end, he decided to wait. Sarah was an adult. If she needed time, he had to respect that. But if she didn't contact him within 24 hours, he'd start looking. Sitting in his chair, staring at the family photo on his desk, one that now felt like it belonged to a different life, Jack felt utterly lost. How had it come to this? And how could he fix it? One thing was certain. When Sarah returned, and he had to believe she would, they would need to have a serious talk. No more secrets. No more misunderstandings. It was time to put everything on the table, no matter how painful. With one last look at the photo, Jack got up. The next day would be another tough one. He needed rest and strength for his daughters and himself. And maybe, just maybe, Sarah would come back home, ready to face whatever was tormenting her. As he prepared for another lonely night, Jack made a silent promise. Whatever happened, he would do whatever it took to keep his family together. The triplets deserved it, and deep down, he knew Sarah deserved it too. With that thought, Jack finally allowed himself to sleep, hoping against all odds that morning would bring answers and perhaps Sarah's return. The sun had barely risen when Jack, after a restless night, decided he could no longer wait. Sarah had been gone for nearly 24 hours, and the silence was becoming unbearable. With shaking hands, he picked up the phone and began making calls. First, he called Sarah's parents. They had no news of her and were visibly concerned. Next, her closest friends, co-workers, even the spa she frequented. Nothing. It was as if Sarah had vanished into thin air. The triplets woke up in the midst of this frenzy, finding Jack in his office, surrounded by papers and with the phone pressed to his ear. "Daddy?" Ava asked timidly. "Is Sarah back?" Jack paused his conversation, looking at his daughters with a mixture of love and worry. "Not yet, sweetheart, but I'm doing everything I can to find her." The girls exchanged anxious looks. Emma, always the most perceptive, approached Jack. "It's our fault she left, isn't it, because we were mean to her?" Jack's heart broke at hearing those words. He quickly ended the call and knelt to their level. "No, my loves. None of this is your fault. Sarah, she's going through some tough things, but it's not anyone's fault." But he could see in their eyes that they weren't entirely convinced. The guilt he himself felt for not noticing the signs, for not being more attentive to Sarah's needs, seemed reflected in their innocent faces. Deciding he needed help, Jack called Maria, his longtime personal assistant. Within minutes, she arrived, ready to care for the girls while he continued his search. "Don't worry, girls," Maria said with a reassuring smile. "How about we do some fun activities while your daddy takes care of a few things?" Jack silently thanked Maria for her calming presence. With the triplets temporarily occupied, he could fully focus on finding Sarah. His next stop was the police station. Though reluctant to open a missing person case so soon, they promised to keep an eye out and notify him if they received any news. Then Jack visited all the places Sarah frequented, her favorite cafe, the bookstore where she spent hours, even the park where they often strolled. Everywhere, he left a photo and his number, pleading to be contacted if she was seen. The hours passed, and Jack's anxiety grew. Where could she be? Why wasn't she reaching out? Countless scenarios ran through his mind, each worse than the last. Returning home in the late afternoon, exhausted and discouraged, Jack found the triplets sitting quietly on the sofa, their little faces stained with recent tears. "What's wrong, my loves?" he asked, sitting down between them. Olivia, usually the quiet one, spoke first. "We made a drawing for Sarah, to say sorry for being mean." Jack felt a pang in his heart. "Can I see?" Emma handed him a colorful piece of paper. On it, there was a drawing of the entire family, including Sarah, with the words, "We're sorry," and "Come back," written in childish letters. "Oh, girls," Jack sighed, pulling them into a tight hug. "You weren't mean. Sarah loves you. She just needs some time." But even to his own ears, his words sounded hollow. How could he explain something he didn't even understand? That night, after tucking the girls into bed, Jack found himself once again in his office, staring at the phone. Should he call hospitals? Check every hotel in town? The thought of Sarah alone somewhere, possibly hurt or in danger, tormented him. But then his eyes fell on the photo on his desk, the same one he had looked at the night before. This time, though, he noticed something he'd missed earlier. Sarah's smile in the picture looked forced. Her eyes lacked the sparkle he remembered from when they first met. How had he not noticed this before? How many other signs had he missed over the years? Guilt hit him hard. Maybe if he had paid more attention, been a better husband, a better partner, none of this would have happened. But no, he couldn't let himself sink into self-criticism now. Sarah was still out there somewhere, and he needed to find her. Not just for himself, but for the 3 little girls sleeping upstairs. Their dreams likely disturbed by worries no 5-year-old should have. With renewed determination, Jack picked up the phone. He would call every hotel, inn, and guest house in the city if he had to. He wouldn't stop until he found Sarah and brought her home. As he dialed the first number, Jack made a silent promise. When he found Sarah, and he would, they would have the conversation they should have had years ago. No more secrets, no more assumptions. It was time to face the truth, no matter how painful, for Sarah, for the girls, and for the family they had promised to be. 3 days had passed since Sarah's disappearance. 3 days of frantic searching, sleepless nights, and a growing fear Jack had never felt before. The triplets were increasingly anxious, and Jack felt torn between being a father and a desperate husband. On the morning of the 4th day, the phone call finally came. A waitress from a small seaside cafe had recognized Sarah from the photo Jack had distributed. With a pounding heart, Jack asked Maria to stay with the girls and rushed to the location. The Lighthouse Cafe was modest, overlooking the ocean. Jack paused for a moment before entering, vividly remembering the day, 3 years ago, when he and Sarah had their first date here. How much had changed since then? Taking a deep breath, he pushed the door open. A small bell chimed gently, announcing his arrival, and there she was, sitting at a corner table, gazing out the window at the choppy sea. "Sarah," Jack called softly, his voice trembling with emotion. She turned slowly, her eyes meeting his. Jack was shocked by her appearance. Sarah looked as if she had aged years in just a few days. Her eyes were puffy, ringed by dark circles, her face pale and drawn. "Jack," she replied, her voice almost a whisper. "You found me." He approached cautiously, as if afraid she might flee again. "May I sit?" Sarah nodded silently. Jack slid into the chair opposite her, never taking his eyes off her face. For a few moments, neither spoke. The sound of waves crashing on the shore and the soft murmur of other patrons filled the silence. Finally, Jack found his voice. "Sarah, why? Why did you run off like this?" Sarah lowered her gaze to her untouched coffee cup. "I couldn't keep pretending anymore, Jack. Not after that day with the girls." "Pretending what?" Jack asked gently. Sarah looked up, tears forming in her eyes. "Pretending that I'm the perfect wife and mother everyone expects me to be. Pretending I'm not drowning on the inside." Her words hit Jack like a punch in the gut. "Sarah, I had no idea. Why didn't you ever tell me?" A bitter laugh escaped Sarah's lips. "How could I? You already have so much to worry about. Your work, the girls. How could I add my problems on top of that?" Jack reached out, covering her hand with his on the table. "Sarah, you're my wife. Your problems are my problems. We're in this together. Remember?" Tears now flowed freely down Sarah's face. "But that's the issue, Jack. I don't feel like I'm part of this. I look at you and the girls, and I feel like an intruder." "What are you talking about?" Jack asked, confused. Sarah took a deep breath, as though gathering courage. "Jack, I love you. I really do. But from the start, I've felt inadequate. You're this amazing father with 3 wonderful daughters, and I'm just the substitute. The stepmother who will never really be enough." Jack felt his heart break. "Sarah, that's not true. You're just as much a part of this family as any of us." "But I'm not, Jack," Sarah exclaimed, her voice cracking. "I didn't give birth to them. I didn't see their first steps or hear their first words. I arrived too late for all those precious moments." Jack fell silent, finally grasping the depth of Sarah's pain. She continued, words now pouring out like a broken dam. "And then there's the issue of having our own children. You mentioned having more kids the other day, and I couldn't bear it." "Sarah," Jack said softly, "if you don't want more children, that's okay. The girls are more than enough for me." Sarah shook her head, more tears falling. "That's not it, Jack. I do want them. God, how I want them. But I can't." Jack felt his heart stop for a moment. "What do you mean?" Sarah met his eyes, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm infertile, Jack. I found out just before we got married. I should have told you, but I was scared. Scared you wouldn't want me anymore if you knew I couldn't give you children." Shock washed over Jack like a wave. So many things suddenly made sense. Sarah's distant behavior, her reluctance to talk about more children, the tension always present when the subject of family arose. "Oh, Sarah," he murmured, squeezing her hand. "Why did you carry this alone for so long?" Sarah wiped her tears with her free hand. "I thought I could handle it. I thought being a stepmom to the girls would be enough. But every day is a reminder of what I can't have, what I can't give you." Jack stood and moved to her side, pulling her into a tight embrace. Sarah buried her face in his chest, openly sobbing now. "Listen to me," Jack said firmly, pulling back slightly to look into her eyes. "You are more than enough. The girls love you, I love you, and nothing, absolutely nothing, will change that." Sarah gazed at him, her eyes filled with hope and fear. But what if I never become the mother they deserve? What if this depression, this feeling of inadequacy, never goes away? Jack cupped her face gently. Then we'll face it together. We'll get help. We'll do whatever it takes. But you're not alone in this, Sarah. Not anymore. For a long moment, they stayed like that, wrapped in each other's arms in a corner of the cafe, the waves gently crashing in the background. Finally, Sarah pulled away, wiping her tears. "The girls," she said softly, "they must be so scared. I was so selfish to leave like that." Jack shook his head. "You were hurting, but you're right. They miss you. They're worried they did something wrong." Sarah closed her eyes, guilt evident on her face. "I need to fix that. I need to be better for them." "We'll fix it," Jack corrected gently. "Together, one day at a time." Sarah nodded, a small smile, the first in days, touching her lips. "Together," she repeated. Jack stood, offering her his hand. "Shall we go home?" Sarah hesitated for a moment, then took his hand and stood. "Yes, let's go home." As they left the cafe hand in hand, Jack knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There was much to discuss, much to heal, but for the first time in a long while, he felt a spark of genuine hope. They would face their challenges together, as a family. And maybe, just maybe, this crisis would lead them to a strength they never knew they had. The drive back was quiet, the tension palpable in the car's interior. Jack drove with his eyes fixed on the road, while Sarah gazed out the window, lost in thought. Her revelation at the cafe still echoed between them, a heavy truth that needed to be faced. When they arrived home, they found Maria in the living room with the triplets. At the sight of Sarah, the girls ran to her with shouts of joy and relief. Sarah clung to them tightly, tears rolling silently down her face. I'm sorry," she muttered over and over, hugging each of them. Jack, watching the scene, felt a knot in his chest. There was so much to be said, so much to be resolved. But first, the children needed reassurance. After a few emotional minutes, Jack suggested that Maria take the girls to the park. They needed privacy for the conversation ahead. With the house finally quiet, Jack and Sarah sat on the living room sofa, a considerable space between them. Silence weighed heavily, laden with unspoken words and repressed emotions. Finally, Sarah spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm so sorry, Jack. I should have told you before." Jack looked at her, his expression a mix of hurt and compassion. "Why didn't you tell me, Sarah? Why carry that burden alone for so long?" Sarah drew a deep breath, summoning courage. "I found out about my infertility a few weeks before our wedding. It was such a shock. I'd always dreamed of having children, of being a mother, and suddenly that dream was torn away." She paused, tears welling up again. "I was scared, Jack, scared of losing you. You already had 3 wonderful daughters, and I thought if you knew I couldn't give you more children, you wouldn't want me anymore." Jack felt his heart ache. "Sarah, I married you for who you are, not for your ability to have children." "I know that now," Sarah replied, wiping a tear. "But back then, I was so insecure. Then, after we got married, seeing you with the girls, it was like each day was a reminder of what I couldn't have, what I couldn't give you." Jack moved closer, taking Sarah's hands in his. "Why didn't you talk to me about it? We could have faced it together." Sarah shook her head, a sad smile on her lips. "I wanted to be strong, to prove I could be a good wife and mother, even if they weren't my biological daughters. But the more I tried, the more inadequate I felt." "Is that why you've been so distant with the girls?" Jack asked gently. Sarah nodded, guilt clear on her face. "I hate myself for it, Jack. They're incredible kids, and I love them. But every time they called me Sarah instead of Mom, every time they mentioned their biological mother, it was like a stab in my heart, a constant reminder that I'd never truly be their mom." Jack sat quietly for a moment, processing everything. The hurt of being kept in the dark clashed with the compassion he felt for Sarah's pain. "I understand why you were afraid," he finally said. "But Sarah, don't you see? By not telling me, You robbed us of the chance to face this together. You carried this weight alone for so long, Sarah sobbed, tears now streaming freely. I know, and I'm so sorry. I thought I could handle it, that the pain would eventually fade, but it only got worse. And then that day with the girls, the day you made them scrub the floor, Jack finished, recalling the incident that had triggered all of this. Sarah nodded, shame written on her face. I felt so horrible afterward. Seeing them crying, scrubbing the floor, it was like I finally saw who I'd become, a wicked stepmother from a fairy tale. I couldn't bear it anymore. Jack pulled her into a hug, feeling her body shake with sobs. Oh, Sarah, I'm sorry you went through all of that alone. I should have noticed. I should have paid more attention. Sarah pulled back slightly, looking into Jack's eyes. It's not your fault. I hid it well. But Jack, what do we do now? How do we fix this? Jack took a deep breath, thinking, first, we have to be honest with each other. No more secrets, no more pretending everything's fine when it's not. Second, I think it would help if we both got professional help, individually and as a couple. Sarah nodded, hesitant. And the girls? How do we explain all this to them? With honesty and love, Jack answered. They're young, but they're smart. We'll explain in a way they can understand. And we'll show them, through our actions, that we're committed to being a family. Sarah stayed silent for a moment, then spoke softly. Jack, what if I never become the mother they deserve? Jack gently cupped Sarah's face. Sarah, look at me. You already are the mother they deserve. You made mistakes, yes, but who doesn't? The important thing is that you're here now, willing to try to do better. That's what makes a good mother. Jack's words seemed to strike something deep in Sarah. She embraced him tightly, her tears now filled with relief and gratitude. Thank you, she whispered, for not giving up on me, for giving us another chance. Jack hugged her back, feeling a mixture of emotions, relief, hope, determination. Always, Sarah, we're in this together, remember, for better or worse. As they held each other, both knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be more tears, more difficult conversations, more moments of doubt. But for the first time in a long time, there was also hope for healing, understanding, and a fresh start. And when the triplets returned from the park, they would find not just their parents, but a family ready to face the challenges ahead together. An imperfect family, perhaps, but united by love and by the determination to make it work. The afternoon sun cast golden beams through the living room as Jack and Sarah heard Maria's car pull up outside. The excited voices of the triplets echoed from the driveway, signaling their return from the park. Sarah squeezed Jack's hand, her face a mix of anxiety and resolve. I'm ready, she said softly. Jack nodded, giving her an encouraging smile. We'll do this together. The front door opened, and Emma, Olivia, and Ava came running in, cheeks flushed from playing. Seeing Sarah, they halted abruptly, a mix of joy, confusion, and a hint of apprehension crossing their faces. Sarah! Ava was the first to break the silence, running to hug her stepmother. Are you back? Sarah knelt, opening her arms to hug not just Ava but Emma and Olivia as well, who approached more hesitantly. Yes, sweeties, I'm back, and I'm so sorry for leaving like that. Tears began to roll down Sarah's cheeks as she hugged the girls. Jack watched, his heart brimming with emotion. When they finally pulled out of the embrace, Sarah looked each of the girls in the eye. I need to talk to you about something very important. Can we sit down? The triplets nodded, their small faces serious. They all settled in the living room, Jack and Sarah on the sofa, the girls on the soft rug in front of them. Sarah took a deep breath, searching for the right words. Girls, I made a big mistake by leaving without saying anything. It wasn't fair to you, and I'm sorry for scaring you. Emma, always direct, asked, Why did you leave, Sarah? Was it because you don't like us anymore? The question struck Sarah like an arrow. Oh no, sweetie. It's nothing like that. I love you three so much. The problem was with me. Sarah paused, glancing at Jack for support. He nodded encouragingly. You know, Sarah continued, adults can get confused and scared sometimes too, and I was very confused and scared. I had a secret that was hurting me inside, and instead of talking about it, I ran away. But that was wrong, and I promise I'll never do that again." Olivia, the quietest of the three, asked softly, "What secret, Sarah?" Sarah felt tears form again. "Well, it's a sad secret. You know how some people can't have babies. I'm one of those people. And that made me very sad, because I always wanted to be a mum." The girls took in the information, their expressions a mixture of confusion and sympathy. "But you are our mum," Ava said, her voice brimming with childish conviction. Sarah felt her heart clench at Ava's words. "Oh, sweetheart, I want to be your more than anything. But sometimes I felt like I wasn't good enough for you because I didn't give birth to you." "That's silly," Emma exclaimed. "You help us with homework, make yummy pancakes, and take us places. That's what moms do," Jack gently interjected. "Emma's right, Sarah. Being a mother isn't just about giving birth. It's about loving, caring, and being there." Sarah nodded, wiping her tears. "You're all right. I was so caught up in my sadness that I couldn't see how much you already are my daughters at heart. I promise I'll try my best to be the best mom for you from now on." The triplets exchanged looks, as if having a silent conversation. Then, to Sarah and Jack's surprise, they stood and hugged her again. "We forgive you, Sarah," Olivia said quietly, "and we want you to be our mum." Sarah let out a sob, hugging them tightly. "Thank you, my darlings. I love you so much." Jack joined the group hug, wrapping his arms around his family. For a moment, they stayed like that, united, the wounds of the past beginning to heal. When they finally broke apart, Jack cleared his throat. "Girls, there's one more thing we need to talk about. Sarah and I have decided that we're all going to start therapy." Seeing the confused looks on the girls' faces, he explained, "Therapy is like going to the doctor, but for our feelings. We'll talk to someone who can help us understand each other better and be a happier family." The girls seemed to think about this for a moment. "Can we bring our toys?" Ava asked innocently. Sarah laughed, a genuine laugh that filled the living room for the first time in a long while. "Of course you can, sweetheart. I'm sure the therapist will love to meet your toys too." The rest of the afternoon was spent together, as a family. They baked cookies, watched a movie, and for the first time in a long time, sat down to dinner together, talking and laughing. Later, after tucking the girls into bed, Jack and Sarah found themselves back in the living room. "You were amazing today," Jack said, pulling Sarah close. "I'm so proud of you." Sarah rested her head on Jack's shoulder. "Thank you for standing by me. I know it won't be easy, but I'm ready to do whatever it takes to fix things." Jack kissed the top of her head. "We're in this together, one day at a time." As they prepared to sleep that night, both knew the road ahead would be challenging. There would be tough days, painful conversations, and moments of doubt. But there would also be love, understanding, and the chance to build the family they all deserved. Their journey of healing was just beginning, but for the first time in a long while, there was genuine hope in the heart of the Miller family, a hope that, with honesty, love, and a commitment to each other, they could overcome any obstacle. And so, with that renewed hope, they fell asleep, ready to face together whatever the next day would bring. The months following Sarah's revelation were an emotional roller coaster for the Miller family. As promised, everyone embarked on a journey of healing, facing challenges, celebrating small victories, and above all, learning to communicate more openly and honestly. Sarah began individual therapy twice a week. At first, the sessions were difficult and emotionally draining. She found herself confronting years of suppressed insecurities, unspoken fears, and the deep pain of her infertility. Her therapist, Dr. Martinez, helped her develop strategies to cope with her depression and process her feelings in a healthy way. "It's like I'm digging up a lifetime of emotions," Sarah shared with Jack after a particularly intense session. "It hurts, but I also feel like I'm finally setting myself free." Jack, meanwhile, made significant changes in his professional life. He delegated more responsibilities at the company and set clear boundaries for his work hours. Now he was home every night for family dinner and took an active role in the girls' routines. "Daddy, will you read us our bedtime story again tonight?" Ava asked one evening, her eyes shining with expectation. "Of course, Princess," Jack replied, feeling a wave of joy at realizing how much he had missed while prioritizing work for so long. Family therapy also became a vital part of their lives. Once a week, all 5 of them met with Dr. Chen, a therapist specialized in complex family dynamics. These sessions provided a safe space for everyone to express their feelings and concerns. It was during one of these sessions that Emma, always the most expressive of the triplets, asked a question that touched everyone's heart. "Sarah, would you be sad if we called you Mom?" The room fell silent for a moment, all eyes turning to Sarah. She felt tears form in her eyes, but this time they were tears of happiness. "Oh, Emma," she answered, her voice thick with emotion. "I would be very, very happy, but only if you really want to. I don't want you to feel pressured." Olivia, usually the quiet one, spoke up next. "Can we have 2 mums, one in heaven and you here with us?" Sarah looked at Jack, who nodded encouragingly. "Of course you can, sweetheart. Your biological mother will always be part of you, and I would be honored to be your second mom." From that day on, the girls began to call Sarah Mom occasionally. Each time they did, Sarah's heart filled with a joy she never thought she would experience. Over time, the changes in the family dynamic became increasingly evident. Meals, once silent or tense, were now lively with conversation and laughter. Sarah found herself actively engaging in the girls' play, something she used to avoid out of fear and insecurity. One Saturday, Jack found Sarah and the triplets in the backyard, all covered in paint and laughing hysterically, as they created a giant masterpiece on a big sheet of paper. "Look, Daddy," Ava shouted. "Mom's teaching us to paint like Pollock." Jack smiled, amazed by the scene. "That's Jackson Pollock, sweetie, and you're all doing an amazing job." Sarah looked at him, her face radiant with happiness. "Come join us, Jack. There's plenty of paint for everyone." Without hesitation, Jack joined the colorful chaos, his heart brimming with love for his family. As Sarah grew more comfortable in her role as a mother, she and Jack began discussing the possibility of adoption. The idea arose naturally during one of their late-night conversations. "You know," Sarah said softly, "helping the girls with their science project today made me think maybe there's another child out there who needs a family like ours." Jack looked at her curiously. "You're thinking about adoption?" Sarah nodded, a bit hesitant. "I know we already have 3 wonderful kids, but there's so much love in our family now. I feel like we have more to give." Jack smiled, pulling her closer. "I think it's a wonderful idea. Let's talk more about it and see how the girls feel." The triplets' reaction to the idea of adoption was surprisingly enthusiastic. "Can we get a baby brother?" Emma asked excitedly. "Or a baby sister?" Olivia added. "Or both," Ava exclaimed, making everyone laugh. And so the Miller family embarked on a new adventure. They started researching the adoption process, attending workshops, and even visiting a local agency. The project brought the family closer in ways none of them expected. The girls got fully involved, helping decorate a room for their future sibling and creating drawings to hang on the walls. "Mom," Olivia said one day, coloring a picture of her imagined bigger family, "it doesn't matter if our new brother or sister doesn't grow in your tummy. They'll grow in your heart, just like we did." Olivia's simple yet profound words moved Sarah deeply. She realized just how much she had grown and healed in the past few months. The pain of infertility was still there, but now it was accompanied by a deeper understanding of what motherhood truly meant. As the adoption process advanced, the family faced new challenges and uncertainties. There were moments of anxiety and doubt, but also moments of hope and anticipation. During a family therapy session, Dr. Chen asked each family member to express their feelings about the possible adoption. Jack went first. "I'm excited and a bit nervous, but most of all, I'm proud of how our family has grown stronger. I know we have enough love for another child." Sarah followed. "A few months ago, I never would have imagined being here. I feel blessed and grateful for this chance to expand our family in a way I never thought possible for me." The girls, in turn, expressed a mix of excitement and curiosity about having a new brother or sister. At the end of the session, Dr. Chen smiled at the family. "You've come a long way. The way you've faced your challenges and grown together is truly inspiring. That night, lying in bed, Jack and Sarah reflected on their journey. "Did you ever imagine we'd be here 6 months ago?" Jack asked, holding Sarah's hand. Sarah shook her head, smiling softly. "Not in my wildest dreams, but I'm so glad we are." "Jack, thank you for not giving up on me. On us." Jack pulled her closer, kissing her forehead. "We're a team, remember? Through the good and the bad." As they drifted off to sleep, both felt a deep sense of peace and hope for the future. The Miller family had weathered storms, emerging stronger and closer. And now, with the possibility of adoption on the horizon, they were ready for the next chapter of their journey. The road wouldn't always be easy, they knew, but with love, understanding, and the strength they had found in each other, they were prepared for whatever came next. The family that almost fell apart had transformed into something beautiful and resilient, a testament to the power of love, honesty, and perseverance. The bright summer sun shone over the Miller estate's garden, which was decorated with colorful balloons, streamers, and a large banner that read, "Happy 6th birthday, Emma, Olivia, and Ava." The air was filled with children's laughter and the mouth-watering aroma of freshly baked cake. Sarah was in the kitchen, putting the finishing touches on a 3-tiered birthday cake, 1 tier for each girl. Her hands trembled slightly as she placed the candles, not from nerves but from contained excitement. A year ago, she never could have imagined being here, truly part of this celebration, not just as an observer, but as a mother. Jack entered the kitchen, wrapping Sarah in a hug from behind. "It's perfect, honey," he murmured, kissing her cheek. "The girls are going to love it." Sarah turned in his arms, smiling. "I can hardly believe we've come this far, Jack. Sometimes it feels like a dream." "The best kind of dream," Jack replied, his eyes shining with love and pride. "One that comes true." The sound of hurried footsteps interrupted them. "Mom, Dad, guests are arriving," Emma shouted, bursting into the kitchen like a whirlwind of energy and excitement. Sarah knelt to Emma's level. "We're on our way, sweetie. The cake is ready. Can you call your sisters to help carry it outside?" Emma nodded eagerly and dashed off. Moments later, all 3 girls returned, their faces glowing with joy. Carefully, Sarah and the triplets carried the cake to the garden, where friends and family waited. The sight of Sarah surrounded by the girls, all working together, made many guests exchange approving looks and emotional smiles. The transformation in the family's dynamic was evident to everyone. Once the cake was on the main table, Jack asked everyone's attention. "Before we sing Happy Birthday, I'd like to say a few words," he announced. "This birthday is special not just because our girls are growing up, but because as a family, we've grown and become stronger in ways we never imagined." He paused, looking fondly at Sarah and the girls. "This past year has shown us the power of love, honesty, and perseverance, and I'm incredibly proud of how we've all faced our challenges and become more united." Sarah felt tears welling up in her eyes, moved by Jack's words and the journey they had traveled. "And now," Jack continued, a mysterious smile on his face, "our birthday girls have a special surprise." The triplets exchanged excited glances before Emma stepped forward, holding a large envelope. "Mom," she said, addressing Sarah, "this is for you." With trembling hands, Sarah opened the envelope. Inside were 3 drawings, 1 from each girl. Each drawing showed the family, Jack, Duo, Sarah, and the triplets, labeled Our Family, with the figure representing Sarah labeled Mom. Sarah brought her hand to her mouth, tears now freely streaming down her cheeks. "Oh, my darlings," she sobbed, kneeling to hug them all. "I love you so much." "We love you too, Mom," Olivia said softly, and Ava added, "You're the best mom in the world." There wasn't a dry eye in the garden as everyone witnessed this deeply moving moment. Jack joined the group hug, wrapping his arms around his family. When they finally separated, he cleared his throat, clearly emotional. "Well, since we're making announcements," he said, his voice a little hoarse, "Sarah and I have some news to share." Sarah looked at him, surprised. They hadn't planned to announce it today, but she immediately understood and nodded, encouraging him to continue. "Over the past few months," Jack said, addressing both the girls and the guests, We've been talking about expanding our family, and we're very happy to announce that we've started the adoption process. If all goes well, we'll soon have a new brother or sister for the girls. The news was met with enthusiastic applause and cheers from the triplets. "We're getting a baby," Ava shouted, jumping up and down in excitement. Sarah, still emotional from the girl's gift, felt her heart overflow with happiness. She looked around at Jack, the girls, and the smiling faces of their guests, and knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. "Now," Jack said, picking up a lighter, "how about we sing Happy Birthday and try this amazing cake?" As everyone sang, Sarah helped the girls blow out their candles. Watching her daughter's excited faces bathed in candlelight, she made a silent wish, not for herself, but for the ongoing journey of love and growth for her family. Later, as the party began to wind down and the guests headed out, the Miller family gathered in the garden once more. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow around them. "That was the best birthday ever," Emma declared, still nibbling on a slice of cake. "And it'll be even better next year," Olivia added, "when we have our new brother or sister." Sarah and Jack exchanged looks of love and gratitude. "Yes," Sarah agreed, pulling the girls close. "Our family is only going to get stronger and more full of love." As dusk settled in, the Miller family remained together, their silhouettes forming a picture of unity and love against the colorful sky. They had endured storms, overcome obstacles, and emerged stronger. Now, with a new chapter unfolding before them, they were prepared to face any challenge the future might bring. Together, as the true family they had become.